because we now have so many stakeholders that are coming. Formerly, it used to be only the federal government, but now we have state government coming in, we have private sector coming in, so we need a regulator. We have introduced compulsory insurance coverage for passengers and goods, aligning our standards with international best practices, fostering seamless cross-border trade. 3, significantly, through the 5th alteration, number 16 Act of 2023, railways were now removed from exclusive list to concurrent list. This constitutional milestone empowers states to develop railway infrastructure, thereby unleashing innovation, competition, and investment at subnational levels. These reforms represent not progress but a paradigm shift, a commitment to building a railway sector that is modern, competitive, and investor-friendly. From policy to practice, investment as a catalyst. This conference focuses on policy frameworks, financing models, technological innovation, and promise of higher-speed rail issues that are both urgent and transformative. Government funding alone cannot carry this vision. We must leverage public-private partnership, multilateral financing, and innovative credit systems to close the yawning investment gap. The Abuja-Kaduna standard gauge, the Lagos-Ibadan line, and the ambitious projects like the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri, Kano-Maradi corridors prove what is possible when vision meets partnership. But we must go further. Cutting-edge signaling systems, advanced rolling stock, and high-speed networks are no longer luxuries. They are necessities. They represent the heartbeat of a new Africa where people and goods move seamlessly across our borders. A call to action, seizing the moment. Distinguished participants, this is our moment. The discussion that will unfold over these 2 days are not academic exercises. They are calls for action. They are opportunities to translate policy into projects, to turn vision into ventures, and to transform Africa's railways into engines of shared prosperity. I urge you that governments, investors, technologists, financiers, and civil society to seize this platform. Let us pool our expertise, align our ambitions, and rise above challenges. Together, we can overcome funding bottlenecks, close technological gaps, and harmonize policies to create a continent-wide railway ecosystem that is safe, efficient, and sustainable. In closing, let me reaffirm the National Assembly's unwavering commitment to supporting bold, forward-looking policies and attract investment and sustain growth in the railway sector. We will unbundle all bottlenecks that will make it impossible for private sector to come and invest in the regional railway sector. I commend the organizers for their foresight in convening this conference. I look forward with optimism to the resolutions and the collaboration that will emerge. Let us together lay the tracks for future where Africa is not just connected, but propelled forward by railways, innovation, opportunities, and prosperity. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. God bless the African continent. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, sir, the very distinguished Senator Adamu Aliero has delivered his intervention, Chairman Senate Committee on Land Transportation, and because he has a flight to catch, he's going to make his way to the airport at this time. He was patient enough to stay with us through and deliver his intervention. That intervention talks about how government is unable to handle rail transportation by themselves, and how the much needed collaboration in public-private sector is critical and important. As I said at the beginning of this International Rail Conference, when I made my introduction as Director of Ceremony, I did mention that the capital outlay is very high for rail transportation. And because that capital outlay is very high, no government can do it alone. No single individual investor can manage. Investors have to come together as a consortium to ensure that the work is done. And that work is well underway at this International Railway Conference and Expo 2025. I'd mentioned much earlier that you must make time when we go to lunch and later in the day to see the exhibition, because there's just so much on display. As we await the return of the Honorable Minister, before we take the keynote of our keynote speaker who has been waiting patiently to deliver on it, I'd just like to speak to transportation as a whole, as an infrastructural, economic dynamic, because transportation involves just the vessel or the vehicle or the coach. It involves the dynamic of ensuring that everything that has to do with the value chain of rail transport is brought on board. It's not enough to move goods, to move people. We should have a rest place where they go to relax. We should worry about what is on sale. One of my favorite stations in the whole wide world is the Victoria Station in London, which is a big hub for all kinds of things. So you will find the shops, the high-end shops are there at the Victoria Station. You will also find that the train stations in Dubai are a sight for sore eyes, because then they also have other things going on for you. And the train stations in Hong Kong are quite the same, and the train stations in China. This is not to say that other train stations across the world are not doing well. I'm just not familiar with them. I've mentioned the countries where I'm familiar with their rail stations. And so, like I was saying, it is pertinent to note that if Nigeria has high-speed rail and all our rail stations are working, there's a networking that is going on that would be unprecedented for goods, for our economy, and for national unity. It is on this premise that I would like to say that in having the conversations we would have today across board, we all heard not only from the Honorable Minister of Transportation, but we also heard from the Vice President of the Federal Republic, who made the powerful intervention about how, when the time comes, we must all be ready to dialogue and be honest in our conversations and add value to rail transportation across the world. The International Railway Conference and Expo 2025 is here to do that. We have all our rapporteurs, we have all our eggheads in the room, including the Vice Chancellor of the University of Transport. We have regional organizations and national organizations, including the Nigerian Society of Engineers and CIOTA, who are all here to listen, to learn, and to contribute. This is now the time when I keep Mr. Ataguba on standby. This is when we go to your bit. So I'd like to invite at this time my brother to come forward and deliver that very powerful topic, building cross-border railway corridors for trans-African trade. Please give a warm Abuja welcome to Mr. Roland Ataguba, who will be delivering the keynote speech as our keynote speaker. Let's keep clapping until he gets to the podium. Please help me to welcome him. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on this all-important topic. I hope you got my slides. Wonderful. Because I think the way I had these slides done, that we probably need to move them manually. I will signal to you when it's time to change. Thank you. The subject of the presentation is building cross-border railway corridors for trans-African trade. My name is Roland Ocholi-Atagba. I remain CEO of Bethlehem Rail. Next slide, please. I will skim through the presentation and be as brief as I can be. So I will not dwell too much on why it is imperative for Africa to limit myself, or I'll try to limit myself as to how to arrive at the destination in one piece, perhaps in a timely fashion, or even in a hurry. As we've, I think, bellyached about the problems for too long, and it's really about solutions and how we get to where we need to be. Notwithstanding, the purpose of this presentation is to focus on the how rather than the why. Next, please. Again, the subject of this presentation is building cross-border cross-border railway corridors for trans-African trade. So the key words in this discourse need underlining for the sake of good order. Cross-border railway corridors means routes of movement of goods and people between sovereign states. Trans-African trade means commercial transactions between the people of different African states. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is an understanding among states that creates the largest free trade area in the world, measured by the number of countries participating. The pact connects 1.3 billion people across 55 countries with a combined GDP valued at $3.4 trillion. It has the potential to lift 30 million people out of extreme poverty, but achieving its full potential will depend on putting in place significant policy reforms and trade facilitation measures. The African Integrated Standard Gauge Railway Network, which is my coinage, largely because it used to be, or certainly still known as, the African Integrated High-Speed Railway Network, is a network of what you may call a network of networks, comprising of 74 links covering a distance of 50,000 kilometers, will connect all the land countries to seaports, being North, East, West, Central, and Southern Africa. It also creates cross-country transport beltways across the continent of East to West and North to South. So we talk about Cairo to Cape Town, Algiers to Lagos, Dakar to Djibouti, Point Noir to Dar es Salaam, and so on. So it connects the political and economic capitals of Africa to one another. In essence, its main objective is to enable the political and economic integration of the African continent in the context of Africa 2063. I think my slides are ahead of me, but notwithstanding, we'll get there. In the context of Agenda 2063 and the AU's other strategic frameworks such as NEPAD, PIDA, IDA, BIAT, etc. Network is to be delivered in two broad phases, 35,000 kilometers by 2033 and the balance 15,000 kilometers by 2043. So a period of about 30 years from the Lagos Declaration of 2013. I think, let me try and catch up with the slides because they've left me behind. Can we go back? This is a key point. Yeah, this slide. This is where our problem lies. This is a map of the African railways. As you can see, they're disconnected and disoriented. That is the legacy the colonials have left us with. Most of these railways do not or are not of the same gauge, so it is difficult to even interoperate where they actually connect. Only in the southern African region do we come anywhere close to a network that crosses borders. Perhaps in East Africa as well, you have Uganda and Kenya, Tanzania. In West Africa, we've got maybe the partnership between Cote d'Ivoire and Burkina, and Senegal, Mali. Elsewhere, all we have are just the connections of port to hinterland. Now, it is difficult for you to build a network on the basis of these sort of links. And it is therefore imperative that we have this network of networks, and it's based on regional integration. So you have ECOWAS, a railway network of ECOWAS states, in Southern Africa, in the EAC. But of course, they bring with them a number of challenges because of some overlaps of the regional economic communities as well. And of course, we've got these issues in ECOWAS at the moment. But the reality is, regardless of political ideology or even your economic realities, the geography that puts you together, whether we have diplomatic relations with the Niger Republic or our next door neighbors in Cameroon or Chad, the people on both sides of the border will trade, will interact, and therefore, like it or not, we are bound together by fate. And therefore, we must organize ourselves in a way that there is some mutuality of benefit as a result. So rather than dwell on those differences, what are the issues and how can we arrive at this required network of networks? I say there are really three things that would help us deepen and to accelerate our achievement of these objectives. And they're the people, the systems, and the organization. The systems, as I say, we're not reinventing the wheel. The systems, or even the organizations, many people have done that. The real challenge is in the people. enable us do those things that we have set out as our objectives. As I say, you can't keep doing things the same way and expect a different result. And our reality has been that in the last 20 years, we have only managed to build 500 kilometers of track. Now we need to get to 5,000 kilometers of track. We're doing 500 kilometers in 20 years. I bet by the time we get to 5,000 kilometers, practically none of us here will be alive. And that's not the outcome that we want. China does 5,000 kilometers in a year. So it's not rocket science, and these things are not difficult to do, as long as we're able to marshal the change that we need to get to where we're. So my message really to this conference is that we need to be the change that we want, and it all starts from us. I thank you very much for listening, and hopefully we can talk some more the day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A man who knows his onions, understands what time it is, and has studied the rail system across the African subcontinent for a very long time. Managing Director of Bethlehem Rail, our keynote speaker, Mr. Roland Ocholi-Atagoba, who has explicated for us what it means to have connectivity within the African subcontinent, and explaining that our challenge, when you look at the map, is about how we are not connected, how our goods are not getting to each other, and we are brothers and sisters, and how there are certain things that have to go to Europe before they come to our country, and that should not be so. And that once the Africa Free Trade business is taken on board, the rail stations across the African subcontinent will be the ones that will drive the economy and ensure that trade is ongoing. In addition to all of that, he mentioned that South Africa happens to be the one that has the closest to any other nation in the continent about networking and connectivity. South Africa is the one that seems to have the closest to utopia, which we're looking for to ensure that our nations are well connected, especially now with the policy from the AU that connects all of us. I'd like to inform you that at this point in time that Mr. Roland Ocholi-Atagoba has delivered his keynote, that keynote has set the tone for the panels that we would be having and the conversations that will follow through. Those panels are well established in your program. If you open them, you will see them. But before we get there, I'd like you to give a truly rewarding round of applause to our keynote speaker, who has done a great job in telling us about the work that would make the rails begin to be ignited, that would make the trains cross across Africa, that would deliver those goods, services, and movement of people that we're seeking to unify the entire continent. Congratulations, and we thank you for coming to deliver this to set the tone. At this point in time, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we understand the meaning of time. And as we see, we're already upon lunch, and some people did not even make it to tea break. We've been sitting and listening and chatting and talking for this long. And sometimes, once the stomach does not have the requisite infrastructure for stomach infrastructure, we might begin to flag a little bit, and our brains do not connect with what the people that are standing here are saying. So we might want to take another break at this time and go to lunch and reconvene at about 4 o'clock. Be ready for the long haul. Because you know what? This second International Railway Conference at Expo 2025 is a must-do. The rapporteurs must have the panels. We must come out of this place with information and strategies that will push the African continent and indeed Nigeria forward, that will bring on board the speed rail that we're talking about, that Mr. Samuko so explained to us earlier on. Mr. Vice President is waiting for the conversation and the short briefs that will come out of this place, and it will be so delivered to him after the second day. So permit me at this point to invite you to lunch. Bon appetit. When we return, we will ignite the speakers and the keynotes that are on your program. And please let's have lunch. I eat very slowly, so I would go to lunch quickly so that we can get back here for between 4 and 4:15. No longer than 4:15, so we can carry this through. I'd like to invite the ushers and the organizers to arrange for people who are going to lunch, and those who need to pray. The hotel has portions and places where you can pray, and we'll therefore invite you to have your lunch at this time, and we'll reconvene at exactly 4:15. Thank you very much. Thank you, Honorable Minister. The VIP would be shown the way to where the lunch will take place, and the rest of us, of course, have our tickets at the back of our tag, and we can make our way to lunch.